Okay, we'll wait a minute for the coffee to arrive. I don't want to. Okay, fine. Good. We're going to start. Mem Gimel Amid Aleph with 4 lines from the top of we're 1 line. We're in the first line. Fourth word on the first line. B'shachat Sa. So we had mentioned that the psukim and at the beginning of Parshas Chukas about the mitzvah paraduma, they come in 2 different forms. They come in one form in which the connotation of the pasuk varies from whatever came beforehand. So you have to shift. Shift gears, and they come in a second form where the connotation sort of continues along the lines of what was in the previous of what was in the previous pasuk. So now we're going to, that's what we say, Kol parsha kula mashma motzi miyan mashma. Either it's a mashmos that's different from what came beforehand, thank you, or it's a mashma memela, or the pasuk just kind of continues along whatever was implied in the previous pasuk. But how you're going to understand the psukim will depend upon how you understood the previous psukim, or what the starting point was. So when we shift gears, you will shift, accordingly based on your interpretation. And we have the interpretation of Rav, the interpretation of Shmuel. So v'shachat osa shel yishchot acheres ima, the fun of this. So v'shachat osa shel yishchot acheres ima, period. That when you shech the paraduma, it means that you shech the paraduma without shechting another animal, doing another avoda at the same time. Then it says lefanav. The Rab, according to Rab, lefanav, it means that you have Elazar, who's the one who's shechting the parah, because we had mentioned Elazar's name beforehand, and it says that in a satem osa el Elazar hakohen, and then it says v'shachat osa lefanav. So we're still on Elazar as far as Rab is concerned. And when it says lefanav, it means shlo yasik daito mimena, that when Elazar shechs the paraduma, he's not supposed to stray in terms of his conversation, in terms of his concentration. The Shmuel sheizar shochet, but Shmuel understood it differently. That a non-Kohen is allowed to shech. Then it just means when the non-Kohen shechs, he shechs, in front of Elazar, lefanav, in front of Elazar. So we're starting out right now with the assumption, according to Rav, that Elazar is doing the avoda, and according to of the shkita, and according to Shmuel, somebody else, a non-Kohen, can do it. So then it says, "V'lakach Elazar hakohen midama be'etzba'o," that Elazar is the one who does the Kabbalah Sadam, that he receives the blood from the shechting of the paraduma, and now he's going to do a sprinkling. He's going to sprinkle the blood in the direction of the Oel Moed 7 times. Remember, he's standing on Har HaMishkan, Har HaZeisim. So according to Shmuel, this pasuk puts this service of the Kabbalah Sadam and the Hazar Sadam squarely back into Elazar's hands, because previously the Shechita would have been done by Azar, Ladure Elazar. The Rab, but according to Rab, no, this is Habemiut Achamiut, that we already knew from the previous pasuk that Elazar was doing the Shechita. Now we're being told that Elazar is doing the Kabbalah. That's 2 different miutim, that it must be only Elazar, not somebody else. So a mir achamir, a double negative, equals a positive, that even a Kohen Hedyot is allowed to do the Kabbalah and the Hazah according to Rab. That's what we would derive from this pasuk. And then we go on a couple of psukim later after the Sreifa Sapara. It says, we spoke about this yesterday. The Kohen takes cedar wood and hyssop and the crimson thread and throws it into the fire. So who's doing this? It says, Kohen. Well, according to Shmuel, the Philip Kohen Hedyo. So Shmuel had said that the previous part of the service is done only by Elazar. So now when it says Kohen, it's teaching you that even a Kohen Hedyo can do this. The Rab, according to Rab, the previous part of the service he had already learned from Amir Achamir that it could be done by any Kohen. So therefore, what does it mean now when it says V'lakach HaKohen? So it's direct. So according to Rab, there's a reason why it has to tell you that this part is also done by a Kohen. I might have thought that since this does not relate to the actual body of the parah, this is just dealing with extraneous material, namely this piece of hyssop and this cedar wood and crimson thread. So I might have thought, lowly, Therefore, we're not requiring a Kohen altogether. Kamash Malan, that's why the pasuk has to go out of its way to tell me specifically, no, this also requires a Kohen. Then we have the following pasuk. This is pasuk Zion in Parak Yutes of Midbar Pashas Kukas. V'chibes begadav haKohen. That the Kohen then rinses his clothes, so he washes his clothes. So why do we need this statement of haKohen? We know we're dealing with the Kohen. So this is to teach me that all of the avodos that are being done by the Kohen in the context of the avodos paraduma, b'kihuno, has to be when he's wearing the big day kahuna. Kihuno means that big day kahuna aleim kihuna aleim. That the Kohen has to be wearing, even though he's not in the base of Mikdash, he has to be wearing his base of Mikdash clothing. He has to be wearing his big day kahuna. And then the pasuk continues speaking about HaKohen. We know we're talking about a Kohen, so why does it emphasize the Kohen again? That he's going to be Tameh up until the evening after having done the avodah the paraduma. Tameh HaKohen ad Arif. Kohen Mekihuno Lidoros. So that's to teach me that it's not only the Kohen at the original time of the time of the original paraduma who wears big day kahuna, but throughout all generations, any Kohen who does the paraduma is obligated to wear the big day, is obligated to wear the big day kahuna. Okay, so Hani Chalaman Da'amar Lidoros for Kohen Hedyot Shapir. So according to the Man Da'amar, who says that when it comes to all generations, I can have a lesser Kohen do the avoda, that there are aspects, at least of this avoda, that it has to be done by the Sgan Kohen, by the deputy Kohen Gadol, by a Lazar, and there's a chiddush that in future generations it could even be done by a regular ordinary Kohen Hedya. So I need a special reboy to teach me that when he does it, he has to wear his big day kahuna. But we also had another opinion who said that the distinction in terms of future generations is that it's going to be done by a Kohen Gadol, because I learned Gzera Shava Huka from the Avodas Yom Kippurim. So Hash the Kohen Gadol be'inan. So if I'm going to upgrade that I require a Kohen Gadol, obviously I'm going to require a Kohen Gadol in all of his grandeur and splendor. The Kihuna Mibaya, do I really need a pasuk to tell me that he has to wear his big day kahuna? Obviously, if it's the Kohen Gadol, he comes, with all of the bells and whistles. So we say in Milsa da Asi V'Kavachomer talk because of Lakwa. We have a general principle that even if I could have figured out something myself, but if it's not explicit, so I need the pasuk to make it more explicit that he has to wear his big day kahuna. Okay. V'Asaf Ish Tahor, and then we have the gathering up of the ashes. When it comes to gathering up the ashes, I no longer have a mention of Elazar, nor do I even have a mention of Kohen, but I have a mention of an Ish. It sounds like it could be like any man. So what is this teaching me? Who's included here and who's excluded here? The Asaf Ish Doris Ephra Para and he's going to place the ashes at Lahakshir es Hazar. So Ish Lahakshir es Hazar. So when it says Ish, so Ish comes to include even a non-Kohen, and Tahor, but Ish does not, interestingly enough, come to exclude a woman. It doesn't come to exclude a woman. It just means that you can have somebody who's not a Kohen, because the word tahor then is teaching me anybody who's tahor, and anybody who's tahor would include even a woman. Lahakshir isha. And then the pasuk, we quoted one more word, that he places the ashes down, b'makom tahor, mish sheish bodas laniach. So it has to be somebody who has a modicum of intelligence to think about what they're doing, that they're putting down the ashes of the paraduma. So therefore, that excludes somebody who's a deaf mute or an imbecile or a katan who don't have a requisite level of das. Lehaniach, to put something down and know what they're doing. So Tanan Hasan, we have a Mishnah. This Mishnah is in Maseches. It's in Maseches Para. Hakol kasherin lekadesh chutz mechera shoyte v'katan. That everybody is kosher when it comes to putting together the kiddush, the solution of the paraduma, which is a combination of water and the ashes. It's a mayim chayim elkeli, right? And the ashes of the paraduma that are mixed together with the water. So everybody is kosher to do this part of the service, except for a cheresh shoyte v'katan. Rabbi Yehuda makshir b'katan. Rabbi Yehuda, however, says that a katan would be allowed to do it. Uposel b'isho v'androgynous, but he says that a woman can't do it, and since an androgynous also is a person who has simanim of both a man and a woman, so that would exclude an androgynous as well. It has to be for somebody who's 100% male. So my time of the Rabbanan. So when it comes to the kiddush of the mechatas, the putting together of the solution of the paraduma ashes with water, what's the reason the Chachamim say over here that everybody is qualified except for a katan? Except for cheresh to the katan. So the ksiv lakula tamei, because in the continuation of the pasuk of the parsha in pasuk Yudzayin says lakula tamei me'aparsvei pas hakatas, that they take it. Those people that were involved up until now take from the ashes of the paraduma, benasan alav mayim chayim okeli, and mix it together with water. Lakula tamei me'aparsvei pas hakatas. Hanak the paslik lach basipa. In other words, it's the same people, the people that we had been describing in terms of the Asaf, Ishtahor, and so forth. So we didn't really have any exclusion of that class of people between that pasuk, which was pasuk Tes, and this pasuk, which is pasuk Yud Zayin, that deals with the Kiddush. Sounds like we're talking about the same class of people. Hanak the pasuk lach basipa pasuk lach b'Kiddush. Those people, namely the Chayav Shota B'Katan, who had been disqualified when it came to the gathering up of the ashes and putting them down, they're also disqualified when it comes to the mixing of the ashes together with the water. And those people who had been qualified to do the gathering of the ashes, so they're the same people that we're describing now, the same velakhu. Those people are also qualified to do the kiddush, the mixing together of the water and the ashes. So Rabbi Yehuda, however, disagrees, says no, not the same people, different people. Why is that? Because we started out talking about asaf ishtahu b'hiniach. It's a singular person. Now we're talking about b'lakhu. B'lakhu is plural. We've changed the pronoun form, and therefore that means that we're talking about different people. My b'lakhu. B'lakhu means, number one, that we're adding somebody that we didn't have before. B'lakach is one person, but now b'lakhu, we're adding somebody else. We're adding the katan who had been disqualified when it came to the gathering of the ashes, can actually mix together the solution. The afilu katan, the pasi lachasam, hacha kasher, is going to be kasher. And what about the woman? Isha minale. How do we know that the woman, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is going to be disqualified for mixing together the solution? Isha minale, because it says benasana love mayim kayim el keli. Why do I have this extra word benasan that seems to be superfluous if I already know whom I'm talking about? Benasan below benasana. It means that it has to be a male, benasan, to whom the verb form benasan would apply, and not a woman to whom the verb form of benasna would apply. That's why you'd say, but I have to say that the person put it down, right? That I need the word benasan. Yeah, you could say benasnu. If you're going to start with belahu, you could have said benasnu. Why are we changing the verb form to go from plural to singular? So that must be to teach me that it's benasan below benasna. But the Chachamim say no. We're sticking with the same people. The same people who were qualified to do the gathering of the ashes and the placement down of the ashes are the people who are qualified to mix together the water and the ashes to do the kiddush. Namely, that a woman is qualified to cut and is not qualified. But how do the Chachamim know that? Because of had we just gone along with the same verb form that we had before when we spoke about the asaf ishtohor b'hiniach, and we had said similarly b'lakach b'nasan and not b'laku b'nasan. So then, then I would have thought that I need that it is being that it's being placed, that it's being taken, that one person is taking the ashes, and that person is going to place the ashes down on the fire without anybody helping him. I mean, there could be a lot of, not on the fire, on the water. I would think that I would need one person who's going to both take the ashes, and that one person will place the ashes on the water. But the ashes, you can have a lot of ashes, a hefty amount of ashes. It could be a lot for one person to do. So so Torah is saying that it doesn't have to be only one person. You can even have multiple people picking up the ashes. Because of Achman v'laku v'nasnu, and once I'm going to the verb form v'laku, so you'll say, oh, so why not then just say v'nasnu? If you say v'nasan, that must be coming to exclude somebody, namely a woman. So say no. Havamina adashakli trevi. I might think that you bedavka need two people to pick up the ashes and two people to place down the ashes into the water. Therefore, the Torah is telling you that there's flexibility here. That even if two people pick up the ashes and one person places the ashes in the water, that's perfectly fine. But we're not changing the general identity of who is qualified to do the kiddush, to do the mixing together of the ashes and the water. It's the same people who would be qualified to do the assembly of the ashes, the gathering of the ashes in the first place. Namely, a woman is qualified, a katan is not. Then we have the pasuk in Yud Ches, which says that you have the sprinkling of the paraduma ashes upon the person who's tamei. You take a hyssop branch and you dip it in the paraduma solution, and you sprinkle it on whoever is tamei and whatever utensils are tamei and so forth. So the Rabbanan who said the Rabbanan isha below isha. So according to the Chachamim, when it says ish tahor, since up until now, when it came to the making of the solution of the paraduma ashes, a woman had been qualified. So now when it says isha over here, it's coming to exclude a woman, and a woman is not qualified to do the sprinkling of the paraduma ashes. But then when it says tahor, tahor is the hakshiris katan. The katan had been invalidated from doing the mixing of the solution of the paraduma ashes. So now when it says tahor, that's coming to include a katan, that a katan would be qualified to do the actual dipping and sprinkling. The Rabbi Yehuda, ish below katan, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, however, the katan would have been qualified up until now. The way that Rabbi Yehuda had interpreted the verse Balaku, that came to include a katan. So now when it says ish, that's coming to exclude a katan. And tahor, the woman who had been disqualified according to Rabbi Yehuda from an asan velona penasna, from the mixing of the para aduma solution. So now the word tahor is coming lahakshiris isha, is coming to change the equation so that a woman would be qualified to do the sprinkling of the paraduma ashes. So we ask the kasha on Rabbi Yehuda, because after all, the Mishnah says in Maseches Para, Hakok Sheven Lahazos, everybody is qualified to do the sprinkling of the para aduma ashes, chutz, with the exception of, and that's what we said yesterday, that Hazas Meimeh Tochiach. We had mentioned at one point in time the sprinkling of the paraduma ashes are psulim beisha. They can't be performed by a woman, ksherim bizarre, but they can be performed by a non-kohen altogether. So that's based on this Mishnah. Hakok ksherim lahazos, and this reboy that we have, that we say that pretty much anybody can do the sprinkling of the paraduma ashes. Hakok ksherim lahazos chutz mitumtum bandroganus beisha, except for a person who is a woman or who doesn't have male signs, because it has to be an ish. So a tumtum whose male organ is hidden, doesn't have the indications, the anatomical indications of being a man is excluded. And androgynous, who also has the anatomical indications of being a woman, is excluded as well. And obviously somebody who is purely a woman. The katan she ein bo das, I think the word here should be ein bo, yeah. The katan she ein bo das isha misayato. And a katan who doesn't have das, meaning a katan who is even on a lower level of das, not meaning that if you have a katan who has even a modicum of das, so we said that according to the Chachamim, a katan is included as somebody who can do the sprinkling of the paraduma ashes. That was Torah lahakshiris a katan. But if the katan mamash, you're dealing with a katan who has no das at all, so then isha misayato, so then a woman is allowed can assist the katan. But we see that a katan is not technically excluded from doing the sprinkling of the paraduma ashes. So mazeh, and can then sprinkle the paraduma ashes. That moves us to Mem Gimel Amud Beis. Below Polig Rabbi Yehuda, and we don't find that Rabbi Yehuda argues with this Mishnah. So this Mishnah actually seems to indicate that a katan would be qualified, and a woman would not be qualified, which goes against the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. So Amar Abaye, Kimin de Amar, so Abaye said no, because of the fact that this pasuk is clearly changing the equation in the way that it's saying the pasuk Yud Ches over here that talks about the sprinkling of the paraduma, speaks about speaks about tabal lakachizov tabal b'mayim ish tahor. It talks about an ish tahor, which is telling me that it's going to be a different equation from whatever came beforehand. So that fits into our general interpretation of the psukim. Came into Amar Mashma Motzi Mian Mashma, that the psukim read in such a way that they constantly change the equation from what came before. And the Mashma Memela, unless there is no change, just says something like Lakach
where it's clearly talking about the person who was coming beforehand without throwing in terms like ish and tahor. But here we are throwing in terms like ish and tahor. So Polig, so Rabbi Yehuda necessarily has to argue, since Rabbi Yehuda said that when it came to the mixing of the water beforehand, Rabbi Yehuda had said that a woman was that a woman was disqualified. So this pasuk must teach me that a woman is qualified. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, when it came to the mixing of the water, a woman was a katan was qualified. So therefore, when it comes to the sprinkling of the paraduma ashes, it must be that a katan becomes disqualified, because that's the way that you have to interpret the verses. So necessarily Rabbi Yehuda would argue, and Tosfos points out that there's a Tosefta that actually says explicitly that Rabbi Yehuda argues with this mission in Maseches Para, and it says Shema Hamakshel Shmielei Abraisa. Maybe the one who asked the kasha in the Gemara wasn't aware of that particular Tosefta. V'hizah hatahor ala tamei, and then the pasuk goes on to say, for the sprinkling itself, this is pasuk Yutes, v'hizah hatahor ala tamei, that the tahor is the one who sprinkles the paraduma ashes on the tamei, tamei kashu tamei. So when it says that he is a tahor, it sounds like it's an extra word of tahor, because we already said in the previous pasuk ish tahor. So why does it say tahor here as well? It means that he just became tahor. That teaches me that the various services of the paraduma can be performed by somebody who was previously tameh and only went to the mikvah today, even though it's not yet nightfall. That's called a teful yom. That a teful yom is considered to be a kosher, qualified to sprinkle, to perform the paraduma ritual. So Amar Rabbi Yasi, Yehavu bar Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish b'para. So Rabbi Yasi said when Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish dealt with the laws of paraduma, they weren't able to pick up from the derivation of the psukim to more than what a fox is able to pick up from a plowed field, which is just a little bit of dust, because what they tried very hard to do, according to Rashi, was to work out the entire parsha in such a way that they wouldn't have to be switching gears back and forth and say, oh, who was kashim in this pasuk is pasuk in that pasuk, and who was pasuk in this pasuk then becomes kashim in the next pasuk. Ella, they realized it doesn't work that way. There's no other way to deal with the fact that you are constantly either repeating terms or changing terms from Kohen, Elazar to Ish to Tahor and so forth. Rather, they also concluded that the only way that you can navigate the parsha is if you either figure out how you're shifting gears, and whoever was being qualified in the previous pasuk is being disqualified in the next pasuk, or vice versa, or that you're keeping along on the same lines depending on the verb forms and the pronoun forms that are used, and the various adjectives. So Tani Tana Kamei de Rabbi Yochanan. So a Tana came in front of Rabbi Yochanan and taught him and said a teaching that he had. Kol shkitos kisheros bizar kutza mi ashel para. Said all of the shkitos are kosher when it comes to a zar. Or when that a zar, a non-Kohen, is allowed to shech, because shkita is not an avoda, with the exception of paraduma. That's what we said, because paraduma is not kachim mizbeach, it's kachay bedek, a bias, the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore once I say I need a Kohen, so I can't distinguish between shkita and other avodas, because none of them are strictly an avoda. If I need a Kohen for one, then I need a Kohen for the whole thing. So Amalei Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan didn't like that. Rabbi Yochanan said, Puktani Levara. He said, I don't like the tradition that you're reciting. We never find that a zar, a non-Kohen, is disqualified from performing shkita, because it's not an avoda. I don't care whether it's kachim is bad. I don't care if it's paraduma. A non-Kohen is qualified. Rabbi Yochanan not only didn't pay attention to this tradition from Tanaim that was recited in his presence, but even went against his own Rebbe when it came to this principle. That's how strongly he felt. Because Rabbi Yochanan actually even quoted his own Rebbe as saying that the shkita, the paraduma, has to be done by a Kohen. Shkita's parabizar pesula, that the paraduma is shechted by a non-Kohen is pasul. And then Rabbi Yochanan quickly said, I happen to disagree even with my own Rebbe. And I say, says Rabbi Yochanan, that it's kosher. Because Rabbi Yochanan says we don't find that shkita is ever pasul when it comes to a non-Kohen. A non-Kohen can perform shkita, even the paraduma. It seems like the Rambam paskins like Rab that all of the services, the initial services of the paraduma, including the shkita and the sreifa, have to be done dafka by a kohen. But the wording of the Rambam is a little bit cagey because I couldn't find him say the actual word shkita explicitly. So I leave that for further study. Balo eitzel paro shnia. And the Mishnah said that the Kohen Gadol comes to his par a second time and does a second vidoy for all of the Kohanim, for the entire Shevet of Kohanim. So why in the first vidoy in the par did the Kohen Gadol only include his own household and not all the Kohanim? The second vidoy included all of the Kohanim. So no sense. This is the way that it works when you're dealing with judgment. Mutav yavo zakai v'yechaper but that if you're advocating for people, then you should first be cleaned yourself from any judgment. So therefore, the Kohen makes sure to first advocate on behalf of himself and his own household, and then he can advocate on behalf of the entire Shevet of Kohanim. It would be much more disadvantageous for the Kohen to advocate on behalf of the entire Shevet Kohanim before he is cleansed of his sins himself. That brings us to the next Mishnah, Naya Mishnah. Shalta v'kiba mizrak esdamo. The Kohen on Yom Kippur. We're getting back to Yom Kippur. We will just remember for a moment that the Masechta is dealing with the Avodas Yom Kippurim, and we took a little bit of a detour to discuss the Avodah Paraduma. But now we're back to Yom Kippur. So the Kohen Gadol shechs the par. The kibbutz mizrak is damo, and he receives the dam in a little bowl. There's a little bowl which is set aside to do the kabbalas dam. That for sure has to be done by the Kohen Gadol. The shechita, when it comes to Yom Kippur, there we probably paskin as well, like Bob, that the shechita could be done really by a non-Kohen. But often the Kohen Gadol would do the shechita too. But whoever did the shechita, the Kohen Gadol was the one who certainly had to do the kabbalah in a bowl of the blood of the par. But no, then he would give it over, because now the Kohen Gadol is going to have to take a break in order to do the avodas hakitoris, most difficult avodah of Yom Kippurim. So he gives the blood over to in the bowl over to somebody else to stir, presumably another Kohen, to stir the blood on the fourth row within the heichal. Sounds like within the heichal, the Gemara is going to clarify. The shechita is not taking place in the heichal. Why in the world would you just bring the blood into the heichal and the kodesh? Why not keep it in the azara? It means the azara. It means that's 4 rows away from the heichal. Going from west to east, it's 4 rows away from the heichal. Yedosh kadesh lo yikrosh is going to be stirred by somebody else, so it's not going to congeal or coagulate. Not to machta. Then he took a little shovel. And the Kohen Gadol went up to the mizbech. This is the mizbech achitzon in the azara, where there were different pyres of there were different fire that were ignited over there. And he would go up to the special pyre that was set aside for taking Ketoris ashes, or as the case may be, and he would clear away the coals of this way and that way. And he would take from the innermost coals. Some don't have the girsa of taking from the innermost coals. Just, he would take any coals. And then he would go azara, and then he would put it down in the 4th row of the azara. It turns out this is the same row that we were talking about. It's the 4th row in the azara coming away from the heichal. So we could either call it the row at Harvi Shebeheichal or Rovet Harvi Shebazara. It turns out it's the same row. It's the same area of the azara where he is placing down the shovel with the coals for the time being. He's going to have to fill up his hands with the 2 handfuls of the actual ketoris, of the actual incense that's going to have to be mixed together in the shovel in order to create the smoke that will come out. That service is going to be done in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. In the meantime, he's putting down the coals on the 4th row in the azara, walking from the heichal from west to east. Now the Kohen Gadol had a lot to do that day, so we wanted to make his avodah as pleasant as possible. He already did the early regular day avodos, like the Tamid Shel Shachar he had already done, and the Ketorah Shel Shachar he had already done. He had already done at this point the burning of the incense that's done every single day. This is now he's getting ready for the special incense of Yom Kippurim. So this special incense of the double handful that's going to be mixed together with the shovel full of coals that he just cleared away from the mizbeach, So he's already getting tired. So we're going to make it a little bit easier for him. When it came to the regular ketoris, during your everyday ketoris, he would use a shovel of silver, and then he would, because we didn't want to necessarily ruin the shovels by having, if it was a golden shovel and it's going to have all kinds of coals go into it, so that might destroy its beauty. So they would have two shovels, one of silver, and then that one would be emptied out into a shovel of zav, into a shovel of gold, for the actual performance of the Ketores. However, today, at least when it came to the special Ketores of Yom Kippur, not clear if this applied to all of the services of Ketores of the day, even the Ketores that he performed earlier in the Ketores Shalbein Abayim, but certainly with respect to the special extra Ketores that's brought in honor of Yom Kippur, that even that he would just use one shovel, he wouldn't have him, have to change shovels and empty from one shovel onto another shovel. We made it easy for him. He could just use the same shovel in order to scoop up the coals, and then he could keep the coals in that shovel. And he would just bring that shovel into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. On your regular day, he would scoop up 4 kavin worth, which I think a kav is about 12 quarts or so. He would scoop up 4 kavin worth of coals, and then he would empty it into a shovel full of the 3 kavin, and then 1 kav would just fall on the ground. But now we didn't require that he's going to have multiple shovels or take more than would be absolutely necessary. He would simply take the 3 kavin and then he would bring it in with the 3 kavin. That sounds a little bit like we're talking about even the regular Ketores of the day of Yom Kippur, which requires 3 kavin. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yossi says that every single day it wasn't 4 kavin that he would scoop up, and he would scoop up a sa'ah, which is 6 kavin, and then he would pour that into a shovel of 3 kavin. And today he agrees that he would use a shovel of 3 kavin and to scoop up, and he would just use the same shovel. Most days the shovel was very, very heavy by Yom Kala, but today they used on Yom Kippur, they used a lighter shovel. Most days they would use a shovel where there was only a small handle. But on Yom Kippur they used a very long handle so that the Kohen Gadol could assist himself. He would have to take the shovel with him all the way in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. He could tuck it underneath his arm, and he could use his underarm to sort of assist his hand in carrying the shovel, because the handle was so long. Most days the gold of the golden shovel was like a yellowish gold. But today it was like a reddish gold. They used a shovel with a special, high quality 5-star gold, which had a red tinge to it. Divrei Rabbi Menachem, that's what Rabbi Menachem says. Some say that we don't necessarily pass in this way, and that's why it says Divrei Rabbi Menachem, that everything else everyone agrees to, but this was only Rabbi Menachem's opinion. When it came to the regular Ketoris, so there was half of the that was offered in the morning and half that was offered in the afternoon. But today there is an additional amount in addition to the kavin that would normally be scooped up by the Kohen Gadol. Mosif Malo Chafnav. There's this extra double handful that the Kohen Gadol has to take specifically for the Ketoris that's going to be offered lifnai v'lifnim in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And the actual incense itself, the incense material that was offered for the specific Ketoris of Yom Kippurim lifnai v'lifnim was an especially thin solution that would be crushed up very, very thinly prior to Yom Kippur, on Erev Yom Kippur, that's daka mina daka. On every single day when the Kohanim would go to do their avoda on the Mizbeach, and they would go all the way on the east side of the kevish of the ramp, because they would have to turn right when they came to the top of the ramp. They would be going from south to north, and then when they would get to the north, or the northernmost part of the ramp, that would be the southernmost part of the Mizbeach, and they would turn to their right, which would be going towards the east. Since they would have to turn towards the east, So they would start walking up the ramp. The ramp was, I think, 32 amos wide. So they would, want to start all the way on the eastern side. So they wouldn't have to walk too much. We want to save, as much time as possible. The Yardim Maravo, and then they would go around the Mizbeach, as we pointed out, they would go around counterclockwise, and they would come out on the western side of the ramp. However, in order to show the chashivus of the avoda of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippurim, when he would go up the ramp on Yom Kippur to do his avoda, he would go up in the middle. Even though it would entail some extra walking, nonetheless, it was the covet of the day, it was the covet of the Kohen Gadol, it was the covet of the avodas Yom Kippurim to go right up the middle. By Yom Kohen Gadol, Ola B'Amsa, and then when he would disembark, when he would come down from the Mizbeach, he would also come down in the middle. B'Amsa. Rabbi Yehuda, Kohen Gadol, Ola B'Amsa. Rabbi Yehuda says that whenever it's the Kohen Gadol as opposed to a regular Kohen, he's going to do the avoda. So we always want to give cover to the Kohen Gadol that he always goes in the middle of the ramp. And comes down in the middle of the ramp. In your average everyday circumstance, the Kohen Gadol would do his kiddush yadayim raglayim from the kior, from the regular lever that was used that was set aside in the Azara, the basin that was set aside in the Azara. However, today they used a special bottle, a special pitcher that was made from gold, in honor of the day, because there's no special din that the washing of the hands and the feet of the Kohen has to be davka from the basin, from the kior. It could be from any klishari, so that would be sanctified beforehand. So they would sanctify this pitcher of gold beforehand to be used for. They would put water in it for the Kohen Gadol to sanctify his hands and his feet. Rabbi Yehuda says the Kohen Gadol was always distinguished from other Kohanim, that whenever he needed to do Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, it was never from the kior like all the other Kohanim. It was always from this special pitcher of gold. Every single day there were different opinions how many marachos there were, how many piles of fire, how many pyres of fire there were on top of the Mizbeach HaChitzon. You definitely needed a fire, the Maracha Rishona Shel Ketoris, in order to burn the various limbs of the Korban Tamid, and you needed a separate fire in order to prepare the coals that were going to be used for the Ketoris. And there was a machlokas tanaim whether there was a third fire to be Mekayim Eish Tamina to Mekayim Mizbeach Lo Sifbeh for the permanent fire, whether that was covered by the first two fires, and whether you needed a fourth fire for those Avarim from the previous days, Kabbanos, that had not yet been completely burned. But assuming that you needed all four of those, so today you added an extra one, Yom Chamesh, that there was a fifth of Maracha that was set aside for the special Ketoris that's going to be brought by the Kohen Gadol in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi says you didn't normally have to have four. You needed a third one on your regular day for the Isha Tamid to Kanal Mizbeach Lo Sikbeh. But since you only normally needed three, so today when you added one, it came out to four. But Yom Arba, one extra one for the Ketoris of Yom Kippurim. Rabbi Yehuda said you never needed three or four. You only needed two. You had the one to burn the limbs, and you had a second one to prepare the Ketoris. Yom Shalosh, and today you added one extra one. Everyone agrees that on Yom Kippur you added an extra one for the Ketoris that's going to be brought Lifnai Lifnim to have the coals prepared. So you added an extra one, but once you added the extra one, you only ended up with three. Yom Shalosh. So start the Gemara. Doesn't it say? How could you say that when the Kohen Gadol, when he finishes the shechita, he's going to give the bowl over to somebody who's going to then stir it in the rovet arvisha behecha, on the fourth row in the hecha? This person's going to walk into the kodesh. You're not allowed. Nobody's allowed to be inside of the kodesh when the Kohen Gadol is doing the avoda of the ketoris that he's bringing inside of the kodesh hakadashim. That's the pasuk. It says, nobody's allowed to be in the heichal when the Kohen Gadol does his avodas haketoris. So how can this Kohen be there stirring away this bowl inside of the heichal? So Rabbi Yehuda, no, it doesn't mean that the bowl is inside of the heichal. It's in the azara, tani shel heichal. It means that if a person would be leaving the heichal and they would count four rows, so this could be the fourth row going from west to east. Tana Rabbanim, Mechol Adam Lo Yeh B'Yom Moed, said that this pasuk teaches me when the Kohen Gadol does the abode of the Ketores, nobody is allowed to be in the Yom Moed, in the Heichal. Yachol Afilu B'Azara, I might think nobody's allowed to be in the Azara in the courtyard either. Tama Lo, no. The Yom Moed, it's only in the Yom Moed. Only in the Yom Moed, Midbar. This I know that it's the Yom Moed in the Midbar. Nobody's allowed to be in because that's what the pasuk's talking about in the desert. What about the Heichal and Shiloh, Beis Olam Minayin? So that's why the pasuk says the Chaper Bakodesh, that any place which is hallowed, any place which is sanctified, nobody is allowed to be there. I know nobody's allowed to be there while the burning of the Ketoris is taking place. What about when the sprinkling of the dam and the par and the seer is taking place? B'shas matan dam and minayin, that nobody's allowed to be in the Heichal. Talmud Lomar, because it says in this very same Kodesh, the Chaper Bakodesh, I'd say so. The Chaper Bakodesh, when he's doing the acts of Kapara. Also, how do I know that this is true? Oh, not only when the Kohen Gadol is going in, you see also a minayin that nobody's allowed to be there until the Kohen Gadol actually leaves the area. Talmud Lomar, I'd say so. That's why the pasuk says, I'd say so. And since the Kohen Gadol is leaving, we'll leave as well. We'll finish here. Okay.